Hey there, this is Tara from Wild Bird Farm. I garden here in Zone 5 in central Iowa. Join me today. Hey everyone, it's a brisk morning out, but since the sun is shining, we need to open up the hoop house. So let's head down there to do that. Oh yeah, definitely warming up inside. I finally hung my frost cloth up and out of the way, long overdue. Everything's looking pretty good. Does anyone else feel like they could have a master's degree in wind speed and wind direction? I feel like I'm constantly looking at the forecast to know which side of the hoop house to open, which side of the house to put out my hardy annuals for hardening. And it looks like we have some anemones ready to cut. Now, how you know when they're ready, they have a collar, and when that collar, the space between the bloom and the collar, is about 1/4 of an inch. This one's a little bit farther. This is probably a 1/2 inch on this one. Opened and closed a time or two, and it's ready to be cut. So it looks like, let's see, let's compare it to this one, where the collar is up tighter, but there is still some space. So I'm gonna cut that one too. And look who came in to sniff the flowers. Our kitty cat. So as you follow this one down, you want to be careful not to cut these emerging buds. And I cut down just at the soil level. Let's see. Take that one too. It's got some space. It's just buds and buds and more buds down there ready to pop up. I'm anxious to get their stem length just a little bit longer. I'll cut a few more, but you can tell decent stem length, not really long enough to sell yet though. Just to show you the difference, here's one that I'm going to leave for another day or two. There's not really any space between the collar and the bloom. So we're gonna let this guy probably open up today and maybe tomorrow, and then he'll be ready to cut. We're now up at the shop, and I just pulled out, you can see, my cart full of hardy annuals that I'm hardening off. This is sort of my second round. I've planted out some of the initial most hardy plants out in the ground already, but these are getting hardened off. So that's the in-out game. They're either going up in the shop or out in the garage, depending on which way the wind is blowing that day. And then during the day, they get pulled out and set on the south side or the west side or the north side to try and keep them out of the bulk of the wind. You can see it's pretty chilly. It's 37 out here now, and the wind is 17 miles an hour. So let's get these guys taken down. It looks like the south side's going to be the safest today. All right, we are on the sunny south side. We haven't had sun for a couple days, and it's been extremely windy. So these guys have been hanging out just in the shop, not under lights. So they're gonna appreciate this sun today. You can tell, especially looking at some of the snapdragons, that there is a soft breeze, but it's nothing that's laying them flat and really gonna dry them out. They've been out in the sun for 2 and 3 hour stretches. So today they're gonna have a good 4 hours out in the sun here, but then I'll move them into a protected shade location where they'll spend the rest of their day. And then throughout the next 3 days, I'm gonna be at home, so they're gonna be out here really finishing their hardening off process so I can get them planted in the ground. And just for reference, we have some coreopsis in the back, snapdragons, feverfew, more snapdragons, and when we go in, I'll show you some tops of the snapdragons that I rooted. And then this is, what the heck is this? Pincushion flower. Didn't have very good germination on some of them, but then on the stellata pincushion flower, I saved my own seed and I had awesome germination. Now these little guys are super hardy. They're a little bit dry actually. I might need to bottom water while they're out here, but they're about ready to go in the ground. These are in 128 cell trays. Of course, we've got the curious kitten. Where are you at? Hi, kitty. And then if you saw my raised bed lettuce video, we got this moved out. Now this is also on the south side. I'm not seeing any germination yet, but it's dried out a little bit just on the top here, but I really need to keep those carrots moist. Someone suggested newspaper, so I am gonna lay some newspaper on there today and get this all, get the top layer all wet again, all moist. And we've got a kitty on me. Goodness sakes alive, they're buggy today. All right, in the grow room now, but before we get started, sweet little anemones that we just picked, and I wanted to show you last week. I picked some green peace lily foliage just to put in with all the white panda anemones. Now these are on their way out, but it's kind of fun to have a new group coming in for the week. So just to talk you into planting some anemones, there you go. Okay, we're gonna work our way from the bottom up on the grow shelf. Really in no particular order. I think we started the straw flower together, but I went through yesterday and separated out the seedlings so they all had their own 72 cell. And those are looking pretty good. Also on the bottom is the second tray of pincushion flower. Just like before, the stellata is really pushing the green, and there's some dotted over here in the other varieties, but just not quite as consistently. I laid some of these on the soil rather than pushing them in, worried that I had buried them last time, but so far germination's about the same. Now I've been taking some dahlia cuttings, and these are actually still on the heat mat, but they're looking great. I take them when they're a little bit smaller than some people do. I'm growing these in Root Riot cubes this year, just keeping them moist. I do a spritz of spray on them daily. That's working out really well. I had to modify my dome because a couple of them were too tall for the standard dome that comes with the tray, but this is working out fine. So those are still on heat mats. And then this is kind of the situation of the dahlia tubers. I have half dozen or so of these little cups, and some of them have two tubers in them, and you can see where they're starting to grow up here. But I wanted to show you this Wizard of Oz that I just took a cutting on. So if the camera focuses here, that is where I took the cutting, and there are at least 5 little new buds pushing out from around that original one that I took the cutting from. This is why taking cuttings is so awesome, because I'm gonna get at least probably 6, if not more. I'm guessing I'll probably get 8 starts from this single tuber. And depending on how the tuber looks, when it's time to plant them out, I may plant the mother tuber here as well. Now for my personal vegetable garden, I haven't started too much, but I did start 3 dwarf cherry tomatoes. I'm thinking I could put these in pots even so we can have cherry tomatoes early. And then I did start some peppers, but probably in the next week or so, I'll be starting more of the regular sized tomatoes. And then I don't know if we've talked about milkweed. I started several varieties last year. This is a yellow milkweed, growing really great. There's 2 in several of the cells though, so I'm eventually gonna come through and separate these out and put them in a little bit bigger pot, but these look great. If you watched my video when I checked on my dahlias, there was one variety, let's see, what's it called? American Dawn, that just was shriveling up more than the rest. Some of it even had a little mold on it. So I took those tubers and put them all down this trough. I haven't seen any signs of life yet, but I haven't given up on them. Some of them really aren't that shriveled now that they got in the moist soil. So I'm hopeful I'll get some cuttings off of these. My eucalyptus, this is Silver Dollar and Silver Drop. On the dry side. So the top generally looks dry. I bottom water it. I had it sitting in water actually.
But once I see roots coming out of the bottom of these, it's time to pot them up again. They don't like their roots disturbed, and that's what I've found works pretty well for me. Okay, in this 40 count, we have more straw flower. We started that blue salvia together recently, and I went through and divided these out so they weren't so crowded. A couple of the cells have 2, but most just have 1 now, and they're really putting on some nice growth. I have 2 of these trays of columbine. Now for reference, these are the Mecana Giants. I started them on the 2nd of February. So these are just over a month old. I do think they will be moving out to the shop and grow on cooler here soon, and I think they need some food. Some of those leaves are a little bit light, but I have 2 of these 40 counts, so about 80 total. All right, along with the straw flower, I went through yesterday and separated the status. I have really sketchy germination on status. In one cell, I might have had 4, and then for the next 3, I didn't have any. So I separated them out so they all have their own little 128 plug. I would say that tray is about 60 or 70% full, but then this has got one in almost every cell. So these are looking pretty good, and I can already tell they've grown just being separated a day ago. We also started the new to me Plectranthus, and if you look closely, there's some green in these cells. They do need to be spritzed with water again. I do have these still covered with a dome, hoping that I get a few more to germinate. These are the snapdragons that I pinched and re-rooted. So the process for that is when you have your snaps have 3-ish sets of leaves, you can pinch off that center stem. I dip it in some rooting hormone, and then I re-root them. Now these look a tiny bit wilty, but they're definitely recovering. You can see some of the new lighter growth on the top. That tells me that they are creating roots. And if I give them a gentle tug, they're not pulling right out of the soil. So this is a really easy way to double, triple, quadruple your snapdragons. Now the reason why I don't have this full tray done is I ran out of soil this day, so I only did as many as I had soil for, but I could definitely have done this and more. I should mention these were covered with a dome and on a heat mat up until just yesterday, so a full week or 2, giving them a little bit more protected environment. All right, this is the yellow ageratum that we started recently. I haven't thinned these yet, but that's probably going to be on the to-do list soon. Same with the amobium that we started together. Those are popping up, but I really heavily seeded, so we're going to have to thin those out. And then the last thing I have up here is mountain mint, which I don't see any germination yet. Looks like some of the cells are drying out, so I need to water it. So I don't know about this one. We'll keep it up there. It might just take a little bit longer. That wraps up today. Please subscribe if you haven't. I will be redoing our annual field very soon. We have a few days off, my husband and I. We're planning to rent that tiller and get going on that project. So lots more to come. Like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.